So what was your fear during that time? Well, you're going for funding, but in the meantime...
Well, I just wanted, we asked if we could go private, and we asked what we could do, and I just wanted to write to everybody, and it just never materialised, and I was on the phone, it felt like every week, and at one point I was just in tears, because I wanted to start it. I wanted to start it a year ago, and we waited all this time, and finally got on 4 weeks ago. So it was just immensely frustrating.
You had a time as well, didn't you, Gail, trying to get on the diet? What happened with you?
Well, we'd already been on the MCT diet locally for 18 months, and we'd seen really good seizure control, but unfortunately we had tolerance problems, and Matthew at the end of 18 months weighed less than at the start, but we had good seizure control, but we had to come off the diet because he was being ill. So we wanted to do classical, and we just couldn't get it locally at all, and I was again frustrated, banging my head against the brick wall. We eventually got a referral down south. At the time, Great Ormond Street were doing the trial, so we weren't eligible because we'd already done the diet. But having seen that the idea of ketosis or whatever it was working for Matthew, and then having it taken away and seeing him deteriorate, I knew that the idea worked, and I'm fighting to try and get access to this diet again. Eventually we came under somebody down south, but we didn't have dietetic support, so it was quite difficult for us, and we had lots of local problems. It's more available locally now, and I'm very, very pleased that situation has changed. But it's just so annoying when you think this thing could work for my son, and it did work, and it did work again, and again he went, towards seizure freedom. But to have to fight the system, it's incredibly frustrating.
You've got a problem similar to that at the moment, haven't you? Of trying to get the diet.
Yeah, seems to be a difference in funding in different regions. We've been told that it's not available for funding reasons in our region. There's no dietitians available in Wales currently who are trained. And yeah, a lot of generally the understanding of what the diet is and what it actually can be used for and why it should be used doesn't seem to be there. At least in our GP, for example, has absolutely no knowledge of the diet at all. Didn't even know it existed. And the consultants do know about it, but don't have access to it for various reasons.
And how does that make you feel with a child with epilepsy?
Well, it's very frustrating because we know at the moment my son's his seizures are mostly under control. But we also know that he goes through these periods every so often. He's done for the last 4 or 5 years, where they are under control for a few months, and then he becomes resistant to drugs, or he changes, or whatever, and he starts having attacks again. So even though they're under control at the moment, we don't want to stop fighting for it, because we know that in a few months' time, the diet may be the only thing that actually is going to bring things back under control. So it is very frustrating.
I mean, I know from my point of view with Matthew, when Matthew went on the diet, all of a sudden we had no more hospital trips. So part of their arguments are going into these commission pieces that actually this diet could save money. I mean, from a nursing point of view, an epilepsy nurse point of view, how much money goes in on drugs. From your point of view, are you frustrated that you can't get your patients these diets?
Yeah, definitely. And it does seem very much like a lottery of where you live as to where the funding is and who will take on the diet and things like that. So it's very frustrating when, I'm a big advocate of the diet and saying to someone, I think this would be a good way forward. And then for someone to say, well, no, it's not available to them, or, they can't get it, when I've seen the benefit that the diet has had to so many children I've looked after, to actually have that and say, well, no, that's not possible for these particular people is really unfair.
I think the frustrating part, like I say, my prime example, and speaking from experience, is that Matthew stayed out of hospital. He went on the diet, got better, and all of a sudden there was no more, intensive care trips. There was no more emergency red lighting to ambulances. All of a sudden, they don't even know me in the hospital anymore. Apart from a yearly routine appointment where I walk in with him and they go, Dr. Hilali says, "Hi Emma, how's things?" I go, "Fine," and we walk out again. That's it. Whereas before, so has anybody else had the experience of that?
Yeah, I constantly had a hospital bag at the front door. because at the drop of a hat we'd be back down the road again, we'd be in A&E, we'd be overnight. We've had just overnight stays, we've had 3-week stays, we've had lots and lots of trips. My car could practically find its way down the M62 all on its own to the hospital. We've not had an admission in the last 2 years. I had to write up an emergency plan for my son to go into respite, and I had to reorder diazepam and midazolam because it had run out of date. And we used to use that a couple of times a week, you know, and I couldn't even remember how to administer the stuff anymore. It's just such a difference, you know, from having 30 seizures, off we go to hospital again, IV diazepam, IV diazomols, IV phenytoin, phosphenotoin. We've not needed any sort of rescue meds at all for over 2 years.
What's your situation at the moment?
We were quite lucky actually. We suggested after I think about 6 anti-epilepsy drugs that we wanted to go on the diet, and they said to us that they hadn't got the dietitians in place at that time, but they basically, as far as I'm concerned, they worked towards getting the dietitians with the experience. They really, I can't complain about our treatment. It was fantastic, and within about 3 or 4 months it was in place. I think we were probably one of the first ones at the hospital to have a child. I mean, she was only just over 1 when she started on the diet.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, and they, you know, and she was on the classical, and so she was taking solids as well as, she was having NG tube feeds as well, but she was quite unusual that she was doing the solids as well. And since then, we've got a new dietitian who is just incredible, and the support we've got has been phenomenal. We're so lucky. Hannah's only been in intensive care, I think, once, maybe twice. She's 2.5 years she has been diagnosed. And yeah, and that was right. One time that she was in the ICU was because she had a peg fitted.
Yeah.
So she's only actually been in ICU once.
Right.
But yeah.
So again, we seem to get this common thing that the support is brilliant. When you get good support, it's the main thing. That's what we need. And so this is when we've got our neurologists going for these commissioners, these PCTs that go and please the business case. So I think we've proven that it's important that we have these teams, the nurses, the dietitians, the neurologists, everybody on board. We need that team approach.
But the diet was never suggested to us. It was us that went to the consultant and said, we've read about this, we've looked into this, this is what, you know, we think this would work for us. You know, we'd like to give it a chance because the anti-epileptics drugs are doing nothing for her.
Right. Are we all in agreement that actually this service should be offered everywhere?
Yeah, and sooner.
Not just
Much
as a last
sooner.
resort.
Much sooner.
I mean, my son is on so many drugs at the moment that he's had to leave school, go into a learning centre. He's not the son that we had a couple of years ago, and this is the 4th medication he's tried. Now, why do I have to wait this long and see this change in him? Why wasn't I given a choice?
I know.
I think the most frustrating thing for me is when Dylan was diagnosed at 6 months, 3.5 years ago, the epilepsy nurse that came out to see us actually said, you know, there's this, we can do that, we can do the medication, blah, blah, blah. And of course there's the ketogenic diet. I said, look, my ears pricked up straight away because I'd much rather have gone down a food route than medication. And she said, oh, no, that's the last resort. And I was like, oh, okay. And for all the last 3.5 years, in the back of my mind, I've always had this ketogenic diet, you know, that sounded much more interesting and much more preferable than giving my son unlicensed drugs and drugs with horrendous possible side effects. And here we are 3.5 years later, none of the drugs have worked and we're on the diet. And I just wished it wasn't the last resort and it would have been the first resort. Had it not worked at the time, then obviously we could have gone down the medication route. But that's my very strong opinion, that it really should be given as a choice to the families and parents, that it is a first resort if they choose it to be. Really.
I mean, certainly from Matthew's friend's standpoint, we turn around and say if the first 2 drugs fail, then the diet should be offered as an option.
And it's not at the moment.
Yeah, I think very rarely, realistically, it'll be doubtful we could get it as the first option. Although in the States, we've just come back from Johns Hopkins, for some infantile spasms, they're using it very quickly as that first resort going in. So, but certainly I'm 100% agreement. No way this should be the last resort. If you
Third choice would be a massive improvement over what is there at the moment.
I'm just being greedy.
But for us, to be quite honest, I'm with you on that one. Seeing what it's done for Matthew, I wish it was the first resort as well.
So we don't even know if it's going to work for Dylan yet, but when he was poorly earlier in the year, he stopped eating twice on 2 separate occasions. The first time his seizures reduced dramatically, as in intensity-wise. Second time they stopped completely for 3 weeks through a natural starvation process. So we're confident it should work. So having that knowledge as well, desperate to get him onto this diet, so that's just been mentally frustrating.
Well, I did a workshop for Epilepsy Action a couple of years ago, and there was a consultant that was talking about generally treatment for epilepsies, and he put up anti-epileptic medication, surgery, vagal nerve stimulation. At the bottom, complementary therapies, Reiki, reflexology, ketogenic diet. And that really made me think that is how a lot of medics out there consider the ketogenic diet. They put us on the same lines as reflexology. Yet when you've got Helen Foss's proven
medical treatment.
It's a medical treatment. It's not voodoo. It's real, it's medical, it works. It's been proven scientifically to work.
I mean, the class 1 evidence that Helen's produced has gone a long way to changing that, because no way any doctor can now turn around and say there's no medical evidence this works, because you just shove that randomised control trial and go, actually, yes it does, there you go, there's the proof that it works. Alison, your situation was a little bit different, wasn't it, as far as Neve was very poorly girl, very serious condition, but the diet gave you...
Yeah, well, the diet worked within 6 weeks of initiation through Great Ormond Street, and she became seizure-free within 6 weeks, going from having over 100 seizures a day to 0. So I've got absolutely no... it worked 100% for her, and we did wean her drugs at the same time, so it was purely the diet that was holding off her seizures. But we managed the diet very effectively in Neve for the time that she was on it, yet we were not allowed to be, we were not able to be passed back to our local hospital because there was no resource to accept us back there. So we continued to take a place up at Great Ormond Street with her dietary treatment, which could have very easily and effectively been managed at our local hospital, but there was nobody that was prepared to actually take it on, to learn how to do it. No one had the time to invest in taking back children that had been initiated on the diet, and I felt that was really bad because we were taking up a space. There's a waiting list. We could have gone locally, but we couldn't because of funding, so that annoyed me.
If you could say anything to the PCT commissioners that make these decisions on whether they're going to fund these ketogenic dietitians or not, what would you like to say to them? If I start with you, we'll go around the table.
I think, given that there is proven evidence that this now can work, why it should be considered, cost and resource should not be the barrier to offering this to families with children with epilepsy. It should be considered alongside any other form of treatment, and the financial situation should not be the barrier to introducing the resources to support this and make this happen. We as parents and our children deserve the right to have an option, and all of the options that are on the table, and this is a very real option, and that's what I've learnt here today, and it's something that I want to look into further. I'm just hopeful that as and when I go along that route, I will get the support. I'm very concerned that if I live in the wrong area, that may not be there.
Yeah, Lisa?
Yeah, if like PCTs need to look at the cost of epilepsy within their locality and how much it does cost to have children admitted to ITU, casualty and all those things, and if they weighed that up compared to actually the cost of a dietitian and support services, you know, you're looking at thousands of pounds for a child to be admitted to an ITU for a night. So if you're looking at that over a long period of time, and the fact that like the parents have proven that, you know, it's cut the admission rate considerably, then that should be a rational kind of economical reason why the diet should be offered and the support should be there for everybody. So definitely.
Well, I was going to say what Lisa has said.
Beat you to it.
But if you look at it, why put all these drugs into the children when there's a diet that can work?
Yeah. That's got to save money. It's funny because I've had this argument with doctors before, and I've turned around and said, well, okay, if you're saying you haven't got the funding, but we know on this diet you can get rid of a lot of the drugs that don't work because we bring them down. So surely what you save on the medication, you could spend on providing a dietitian. Mm-hmm. But apparently it comes from a different budget. So it's like this left hand doesn't talk to the right hand. And it's so short-sighted, it appears to me. But yeah, so you've got to be on a money-saving thing by making the kids better.
And lots of children aren't just on one type of drug, they can be on 3 or 4 and still have seizures. So why not give it a go?
So what would you like to say to the PCT
Well,
making their decisions?
Obviously it comes down to finances as far as they're concerned, but and I do appreciate that as a parent, but I would say please listen to parents and doctors and research that Professor Helen Cross has done, because with that backup and proof, surely they've got to realise they've got to give parents a choice. This is about individual children who need individual attention, and one medication can't necessarily be individualised to that child, whereas the diet can be, and it can be tweaked and it can be changed, and that in itself is a fantastic thing. So I think it's just, please listen.
Alison?
Well, you know what I'm going to say. My little girl at age 11 months was given a few weeks to live, and we went on the diet as a last resort, and she had a progressive condition, and we were given 3 more years with her that we would not have had she been on this treatment, and that's invaluable to us. That's time that means the world to us, and the drugs weren't doing it, and had we not been able to do this, we wouldn't have had her for as long as we had her. And so for me it's just the best thing that we could have ever been offered.
Yeah. Go.
Well, I worked out that the 3 meds that Matthew was on before the diet cost just in prescription charges alone about £400 a month, because there were a couple of new drugs that were being trialled at the time. So we saved that £400 a month. We saved the overnight stays. We saved the A&E trips. Resource-wise, it's very easy to prescribe. It's more difficult to get resources for dietitians. But you've just got to look at the bigger picture here. You know, you can't put up a price on a little boy grinning at you and smiling and things, and when you've got the medics turning around to you and saying the diet is difficult, it's unpalatable. The diet isn't difficult, it's difficult to watch your child seizing. And once you've got through the barrier of the diet being unpalatable, we've cooked all sorts today. We've got around that. But then to hit, we've got funding issues. I don't care about your money, I care about my child. And as it happens, I think it would cost less for you to let me have this diet to help me treat my child. Look at the bigger picture. It's just so frustrating. It really is. It's so annoying. You know, I had no problems getting a very expensive medication, and I had terrible problems trying to get a can of keto so that I could give my boy a milkshake. You know, in emergencies and things.
It's crazy, isn't it? Crazy.
It's crazy.
What would you like to say to them?
Well, as a mother, obviously going on the diet, I've got my little girl back, and yeah, she's not sitting up, but she smiles and she laughs, which at one point I didn't think she was ever going to smile and laugh at me again.
I know that feeling.
And that is just amazing, like you said, that's just priceless. But if you're looking, like you say, at the bigger picture, it's not just the money you're saving on the medication. I mean, if you're looking at really the bigger picture, the stress that the parents are under and the complications that go with that, the additional medication potentially for the parents, the family breakdown, the whole picture, everything is affected by the child. Not by the child, but by the child's disorders. And by not having this potential, not life-saving, but life-changing treatment, which it is, the potential financially is phenomenal.
But it really knocks on,
really
doesn't it?
does
To
knock on.
respite,
and
it's
just
this and
respite and
everything else.
it is just phenomenal. So I mean, it's a false economy by saying we can't afford to do this. I can't see how they can afford not to do it, really.
Yeah.
To give that people access.
What would you like to say to it?
Was it difficult and unpalatable? Is that the drugs or the diet? Because the drugs ain't that easy either.
No.
And surely it's, as a parent, it's our right to have a choice. And I would like to have a choice to try the diet for my son.
Yeah.
And
working
that's
with
all I'd
properly
ask for.
trained teams, that's what we want.
Yeah.
But why should I have to leave my region to get it?
Yeah,
I don't want to move house just to get on a diet.
I know.
But that's one of the options we got.
Okay, thank you very much for your time, and hopefully we'll still keep fighting towards this, and we'll make sure that these diets get available to everybody who needs them. And we continue, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, guys. You did a fab job.